My name is Harper Calloway. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, I believed being patient would eventually make people love me correctly. It took one Instagram story to realize that was never going to happen. It happened on a Tuesday night while I was stretched across my couch in oversized sweatpants, half paying attention to some reality baking competition playing on my TV. I wasn't thinking about my family. Honestly, I was trying not to. Work had been exhausting that week, and I'd spent the entire evening avoiding emails and pretending takeout pad thai counted as self-care. I was mindlessly scrolling through stories when my cousin Tessa posted a picture that made my stomach go completely cold. At first glance, it looked beautiful. An elegant invitation printed on thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering around the edges. Tiny string lights glowed in the background where she'd taken the photo. The kind of invitation people post when they want everyone to know an event is expensive. Then I read it. You are cordially invited to celebrate Madison Grace Calloway's 30th birthday. The venue was some luxury estate outside Charleston. Black tie optional. September 14th. My birthday. Our birthday. Mine and my younger sister's. Except the invitation only had one name on it. Madison Grace Calloway. Not Harper. Not the Calloway sisters. Not even some polite afterthought squeezed into the bottom corner. Just Madison. I zoomed in because my brain genuinely thought I must have missed something. I read every line again. Then again. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't crying. It felt worse than that somehow. It felt final, like somebody had quietly shut a door while I was still standing on the other side knocking. I sat there staring at my phone while a woman on TV decorated cupcakes with buttercream flowers. My mother had approved that invitation. She'd picked the venue. She'd mailed them out. And not once during the process had she thought to include me. 20 minutes later, Tessa texted me. Wait, did your invitation come yet? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I didn't get one. The typing bubble appeared immediately, then disappeared, then came back again. Oh my God, Harper. That was when I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, cheerful and distracted. Hey, sweetheart, I'm in the middle of finalizing the seating I saw the invitation. Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence. The party on September 14th, I said. My birthday. It's Madison's 30th, my mother replied carefully. I actually laughed at that. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. It's also my 33rd. Well, honey, we could only afford one big celebration. That sentence still lives inside my chest like broken glass. We could only afford one celebration. Meanwhile, the venue alone probably cost more than my car. I leaned against my kitchen counter, gripping my phone tighter. You spent $12,000 on a party and couldn't even put my name on the invitation? This is different, she snapped. How? 30 is a milestone. I closed my eyes. So was mine. She sighed loudly, irritated already, like I was creating a problem instead of reacting to one. Madison's had a stressful year, Harper. And I haven't? Why do you always make things difficult? There it was. The line I'd heard my entire life anytime I dared to acknowledge my own feelings. Difficult. Dramatic. Too sensitive. I swallowed hard. When have I ever caused a scene, Mom? Seriously. Name one time. Nothing. Because she couldn't. I'd spent 33 years being the easy daughter. The understanding daughter. The daughter who swallowed disappointment quietly, so nobody else had to feel uncomfortable. I'm not fighting with you about this, she said sharply. Then she hung up. Just like that. I stood in my apartment, staring at the dark screen, while the refrigerator hummed behind me. No apology. No guilt. No realization. Just a dial tone, and the familiar understanding that my feelings were inconvenient to everyone except me. The worst part wasn't the party. It was the certainty, because suddenly every birthday of my life replayed in my head all at once. When I turned 10, I begged for a planet-themed party because I'd spent the whole summer obsessed with astronomy. I had glow-in-the-dark stars covering my ceiling and books about Saturn stacked beside my bed. Madison wanted princesses. Guess which one we got? I spent my birthday squeezed into a glittery blue dress that didn't fit right, while Madison twirled around in a plastic tiara, accepting compliments like royalty. When I turned 16, I asked for one thing: dinner downtown with my two closest friends. That was it. Simple. Instead, my mother rented inflatable obstacle courses for Madison because she was turning 13 and all her friends were excited. I ate cold pizza in the kitchen while screaming teenagers ran through our backyard. When I turned 21, I suggested splitting the day. Lunch for me, dinner for Madison. My mother reacted like I'd proposed dividing the family in court. Why does everything have to be complicated with you, Harper? So we went where Madison wanted, listened to Madison's music, ate at Madison's favorite restaurant. I drove myself home before dessert. That was the pattern. Every year I told myself next time would be different. Next year they'll notice. Next year I'll matter too. But people don't accidentally ignore someone for 33 years. At some point it becomes a choice. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how carefully someone must have designed that invitation. Somebody chose the gold lettering. Somebody typed Madison's full name. Somebody approved every detail. And not one person stopped and thought, should we include Harper? That realization hurt more than anything else ever had. Because forgetting is human. This wasn't forgetting. This was editing me out on purpose. By the next morning, my mother had already rewritten the story. I found out because Tessa called me before I'd even finished my coffee. Her voice sounded nervous in that careful way people sound when they're about to repeat something ugly they didn't personally say. Harper, Aunt Linda told everyone you're missing the party because of a huge deadline at work. I froze. What? She said you're super busy right now and that you told Madison you'd celebrate another time. I slowly set my mug down on the counter. I wasn't invited, Tess. I know, she whispered. But that's not all. I already knew I wasn't going to like whatever came next. She's telling the family you don't really enjoy big gatherings anyway. Like, you prefer staying home. I laughed once under my breath. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable how quickly my mother had created an entirely fictional version of me to protect herself. A quiet Harper. A busy Harper? A Harper who voluntarily stepped aside and happily cheered from the background. A Harper who asked for nothing. Because that version was easier. If I stayed silent, everyone at that party would walk away believing I chose not to come. Not that I'd been excluded. That realization changed something in me. I leaned against my kitchen counter and stared out the window while traffic crawled past below my apartment building. She's not just ignoring me anymore, I said quietly. She's rewriting me. Tessa didn't argue, didn't soften it. She just asked, so what are you gonna do? I looked over at the calendar hanging near my fridge. September 14th had been circled in red since January. Every year since college, I'd drawn a little heart around my birthday date like it still meant something. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I said the sentence that scared me even as it came out of my mouth. I'm done waiting for permission to matter. That afternoon, I texted Madison. Simple, calm, non-confrontational. Can we talk about the birthday situation? She read it almost immediately. No response. At nothing. 3 o'clock, nothing. By 6 that evening, I'd paced grooves into my apartment floor pretending I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes. Finally, at 6:43, she answered. Mom said you were busy with work. Don't make this weird. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Don't make this weird. Like I was the one creating the problem. Like I was the unreasonable one for noticing my own name had been erased. I called my father next. My dad, Richard Calloway, 60 years old, retired firefighter, lifelong expert at avoiding conflict. He answered exactly the way I expected him to. Tired already. Hey, sweetheart. There wasn't an invitation for me, Dad. Long silence. Then a heavy sigh. You know your mother handled the planning. That was his specialty. Passive voice. Things just happened around him somehow. Nobody responsible. Nobody accountable. I'll talk to her, he said finally. He wouldn't. We both knew he wouldn't. He'd spent my entire life smoothing over my mother's behavior instead of confronting it. Just don't do anything you'll regret, he added. I almost laughed again. I've spent 33 years regretting not doing anything. That shut him up. We ended the call a minute later. At 11 that night, my phone buzzed again. Madison. Mom said she'll save you some cake. I read that text in total silence. A slice of cake from a $12,000 birthday party happening on my birthday. A party I wasn't invited to. She offered me leftovers from my own life like it was generosity. That was the exact moment I stopped crying about it. Because suddenly it all felt absurd. I set my phone down, opened my laptop, and did something I'd never done before. I planned my own birthday. At first, I didn't even know where to start. That sounds ridiculous at 33 years old, but it's true. When you spend your entire life adjusting around someone else's preferences, eventually you stop knowing your own. I opened Google and literally typed, "How do you throw yourself a birthday party?" The first article that popped up said, "You deserve to celebrate your existence even if nobody else volunteers to do it first." That sentence hit me harder than I expected, so I started making plans. I booked a private room at a small restaurant downtown called Willow and Rye. Warm lighting, brick walls, candles on every table, the kind of place where conversations linger. Nothing flashy, nothing performative, just comfortable. Mine. I reserved it for September 28th, 2 weeks after Madison's party. Then I started writing names. Olivia, my best friend since freshman year of college. The person who drove 6 hours through a thunderstorm to help me move apartments when my ex left. Jordan, my oldest friend from high school who never once forgot my birthday. Maya and Chris from work. Tessa, my cousins Avery and Cole. One by one, I filled the page with people who actually saw me. By the time I finished, there were still 2 empty spots left. I stared at them for a while. Something about leaving them blank felt important. Like maybe for once I wasn't going to force people into my life just because they were family. Maybe the people who deserved those seats would arrive naturally. On September 14th, I tried to stay offline. That was the plan anyway. I ordered sushi, opened a bottle of wine, put on a movie I'd been meaning to watch for months. For almost an hour it worked. Then muscle memory betrayed me, and I opened Instagram. And there it was. Madison's party. Every story, every tagged post, every smiling photo. The estate looked like a wedding venue. Crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. Custom cocktails. A glowing neon sign that said, Madison's Dirty 30. There was a massive 3-tier cake covered in ivory flowers. My mother stood beside Madison in nearly every photo, smiling like she'd personally raised royalty. Caption after caption rolled past my screen. "So proud of you." "Perfect night." "Happy birthday, Madison." Not one person mentioned me. Not one happy birthday Harper too. Not one wish you were here. I wasn't cropped out. I was never included in the frame to begin with. At 10 o'clock, Tessa texted me again. "Aunt Linda told everyone you sent your love." I stared at the message until my eyes burned. My mother had created a fake version of me who smiled politely from a distance, so nobody would ask uncomfortable questions. A version of me that stayed small enough to protect everyone else. That was when I realized something terrifying. If I didn't tell the truth myself, eventually I would disappear inside their version of events completely. 2 days after Madison's party, my mother called me like nothing had happened. She sounded almost cheerful, floating on the leftover excitement of the weekend. "The party turned out beautiful, honey." Madison was so happy. "Everybody kept asking where you were." I tightened my grip on the phone. "You told them I was busy working." "Well, I assumed you would have wanted me to explain." "You told them I don't like family events." A pause. Then instantly, defensiveness. "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this, Harper." There it was again. The pivot. The magic trick my mother had perfected my entire life. Somehow the issue was never what she did. The issue was always my reaction to it. "You threw a massive birthday party on my birthday and left me out." It was Madison's night. It was my night too. "You're being dramatic." I actually closed my eyes when she said it, because the word felt so predictable at that point, it almost exhausted me. Dramatic. Translation: inconveniently honest. I leaned back against my kitchen counter. Name one birthday party that was actually mine. Silence. Real silence this time. Not irritated silence. Not strategic silence. Just empty. I could hear her breathing through the phone. Short little breaths. Then finally, "I can't talk to you when you're like this." Click. She hung up. Again. And standing there in my kitchen, I realized something strange. It didn't hurt the same way anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling emotionally to earn my way back into the family. I wasn't trying to explain myself better. I wasn't trying to become easier to love. I was just tired. That evening, my father called. His voice already carried surrender before he even spoke. "Your mom's upset." "About what?" I asked calmly. "That I noticed." "She feels attacked." I laughed quietly under my breath. That's interesting considering I'm the one who got erased. Harper, no, Dad. Seriously. Did anybody at that party think about me even once? Silence again. That awful Calloway family silence where everybody knows the truth, but nobody wants to say it out loud. Finally, he answered softly, I thought about you. But you didn't say anything. No. There it was. The whole problem condensed into one tiny word. No. He knew. He always knew. And he still chose comfort over me. Can't you just let this go? He asked quietly. I stared out my apartment window at the city lights. Why is it always my job to let things go? He didn't answer because there wasn't an answer. After we hung up, I opened Instagram one more time. My father had posted a picture from the party. Him, my mother, and Madison standing together at the head table smiling into the camera. Caption: Happy birthday to my beautiful girl. Singular, not girls. Girl. That hit harder than my mother's invitation ever did. Because my dad didn't forget me. He edited me out consciously. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the screen for a long time before finally locking my phone. Then something unexpected happened. A message request appeared on Instagram from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Claire Monroe. I blinked at the name immediately. Claire had been Madison's best friend for almost a decade. Practically family. She came to every holiday, every barbecue, every Christmas dinner. Then suddenly, 6 months earlier, Madison announced Claire was toxic and obsessed with her. My mother blocked Claire on everything within hours. The family followed along without questioning it. That was how things worked around Madison. She decided who the villain was. Everyone else adjusted accordingly. Claire's message was short. Hey Harper, I know this is random, but I saw what happened with your birthday. I know what it feels like to get erased by Madison. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I read it 3 times. Erased. That word hit me immediately because it was exactly the word I'd used with Tessa days earlier. Not ignored. Not forgotten. Erased. I sat there staring at the message while memories surfaced slowly. Claire helping Madison move apartments. Claire sitting beside us at Thanksgiving. Claire crying laughing in old family photos. Then suddenly she was gone. Like she'd never existed. And none of us questioned it, including me. That realization made guilt twist painfully in my stomach. Because maybe I'd been surviving the system for so long that I stopped noticing when it destroyed other people too. I didn't answer Claire immediately. But I didn't delete the message either. A few days later, another crack appeared. I was picking up coffee downtown before work when I ran into an old high school acquaintance named Rachel Bennett. We chatted casually for a few minutes about jobs and mutual friends before she asked, How's Madison doing these days? Still at Hawthorne Media? She got promoted, actually, I said automatically. Senior account director. Rachel's face shifted for half a second. Tiny, but noticeable. Oh, she said slowly. That's good. Something in my stomach tightened instantly. What? She hesitated. My friend works there. I thought Madison left months ago. I blinked. What do you mean left? Rachel shrugged awkwardly. I don't know details. I just remember hearing she wasn't there anymore. The conversation moved on after that, but mentally I never left it. Because my mother had spent months bragging about Madison's promotion. Flowers. Celebratory dinners. Phone calls telling every relative how successful Madison was becoming. Meanwhile, Rachel's friend thought Madison didn't even work there anymore. The drive home felt surreal. I gripped the steering wheel tighter the entire way. Something underneath my family's entire structure suddenly felt unstable. Like maybe the image everybody worshipped wasn't real at all. On Friday, I finally answered Claire. Want to get coffee? She replied almost instantly. Yes. We met at a small cafe outside downtown where nobody from my family would accidentally see us. Claire looked thinner than I remembered. Tired too. Not messy tired. Emotionally exhausted tired. Like someone who'd spent months carrying something heavy alone. After we ordered, I just decided to ask directly. Did Madison lose her job? Claire looked at me for a long moment before answering. Yes. My chest tightened. She told everyone she got promoted. I know. The sadness in Claire's voice hit harder than anger would have. She was fired 4 months ago. I stared at her. For what? Claire hesitated carefully. She manipulated campaign reports, inflated performance numbers to clients. Nothing criminal, but enough to get terminated quietly. I leaned back slowly in my chair. The restaurant noise around us suddenly sounded far away. My mother threw her a $12,000 birthday party because she thought Madison got promoted. Claire nodded once. I figured. I rubbed my forehead. Why didn't anybody know? Because Madison panicked, Claire said softly. She was terrified your mom would stop looking at her the same way if she failed. That sentence landed somewhere deep inside me, because suddenly everything about my family made horrifying sense. Love in our house had always been conditional, performance-based. Approval wasn't freely given. It was earned. Madison had simply become addicted to maintaining hers. I tried to help her, Claire continued quietly. When I found out the truth, I called her because I was worried. I told her she didn't have to hide from me. And? She told your mother I was spreading lies because I was jealous. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course she did. My mom blocked you. Within an hour. Claire smiled sadly into her coffee. Your sister doesn't lie because she's evil, Harper. She lies because she's terrified. Terrified of losing the only identity our mother ever rewarded. Success. Perfection. Admiration. Suddenly, I understood something I never had before. Madison wasn't just benefiting from the system. She was trapped inside it too. That Sunday, my mother hosted one of her usual family dinners. Roasted chicken, expensive wine, the good dishes nobody was allowed to touch growing up unless guests were over. I hadn't gone in almost a month, not since the invitation, but something in me needed to see things clearly with my own eyes, instead of through screenshots and secondhand stories. So I drove the 20 minutes to my parents' house and walked through the front door, carrying a bottle of wine I suddenly regretted buying. The entire house looked like a shrine to Madison's birthday party. Framed pictures from the event already lined the fireplace mantel. Madison laughing beside the cake. Madison dancing with friends. Madison hugging my mother beneath sparkling lights. There was even an oversized print leaning against the dining room wall waiting to be hung. Madison in a gold dress, smiling like somebody who'd won something. I counted 9 photos. Not one included me. Not one acknowledged September 14th belonged to 2 daughters. My mother spotted me from the kitchen. Her smile froze for exactly 1 second before recovering. Harper, she said brightly. What a surprise. No deadline after all, I replied calmly. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not guilt. Calculation. Trying to figure out what version of me had walked through the door tonight. The obedient one, or the dangerous one who said things out loud? She hugged me anyway. You missed a beautiful evening, she said while guiding me toward the dining room. Everyone asked about you. What did you tell them? That you were overwhelmed with work. The lie came out so smoothly it honestly startled me. No hesitation, no discomfort. She'd repeated it enough times that she believed it herself now. I sat down at the table quietly, while relatives filtered through conversations around me. Then 20 minutes later, Madison arrived. Still glowing from the afterlife of being celebrated, she walked into the house wearing the gold earrings my mother bought her at the party. I knew because I'd seen them in 17 different Instagram photos. The entire room shifted toward her instantly. People stood, hugged her, laughed louder, like gravity itself tilted in her direction. Then she saw me. A tiny pause. Just one beat. Then the smile snapped back into place. Hey, Harper. Hey, I didn't think you'd make it tonight. I held her gaze calmly. Wouldn't miss family dinner. She looked away first. That mattered more than I expected. Dinner started, and just like always, the conversation immediately revolved around Madison. My mother practically glowed while recounting details from the party. The photo booth was adorable. Tell them about the custom cocktails. Didn't the live band sound incredible? Everyone leaned in listening while Madison retold stories from a night I'd been erased from. Then midway through pouring wine, my mother casually said, "We missed Harper, of course, but accountants never stop working." A few relatives laughed politely. Then my Aunt Carol frowned slightly. "Wait," she said slowly. "Wasn't Harper's birthday that day too?" The table went still, just for a second. But I felt it. My mother laughed immediately. Too quickly. Oh, Harper doesn't really care much about parties. Every face turned toward me, waiting, expecting me to nod along with the version of myself my mother had already distributed. Easy Harper. Quiet Harper. Low-maintenance Harper. The daughter who needed nothing. I set my wine glass down carefully. I actually love birthdays, I said evenly. I just haven't been invited to one in a while. Silence. Real silence this time. My uncle coughed awkwardly. Madison stared at her plate. My mother's smile tightened around the edges. And Aunt Carol slowly looked from me to my mother, with an expression that shifted from confusion into understanding. After dinner, my mother stood to make a toast. She'd done this my whole life. Every achievement Madison ever had received a speech. A boyfriend. A new apartment. A promotion. A haircut, probably. My mother lifted her wine glass proudly. "I just want to say how proud I am of this incredible young woman," she said warmly, looking directly at Madison. 30 years old, successful, beautiful, thriving. I felt my jaw tighten slightly. Then came the line that almost made me laugh from the absurdity. A senior director at one of the best marketing firms in the state. I thought of Claire's voice quietly saying, "She was fired 4 months ago." My mother kept going. "You make me proud every single day." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Madison!" Not one person said my name, not even out of politeness. I sat there during my own birthday month listening to my mother publicly celebrate one daughter, while pretending the other one didn't share the same existence. Then softly beside me, Aunt Carol leaned over. "Happy birthday, Harper!" I turned toward her. Her eyes were steady and kind in a way that almost broke me. "Thank you," I whispered. "You shouldn't be used to this." That sentence hit harder than anything else all night, because she saw it. She actually saw it. Not the polished family version, the real thing. I didn't cry, but something cracked open quietly inside my chest. Just 2 seconds of being acknowledged honestly felt more emotional than 33 years of forced family celebrations. Later that evening, Madison cornered me in the hallway outside the bathroom, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "What was that at dinner?" "What was what?" "You embarrassed Mom." I stared at her calmly. "Mom erased me." "You're overreacting." "I wasn't on the invitation." "It was symbolic," she snapped. "Your family. Obviously you were welcome." I blinked at her. "That's interesting considering nobody noticed I wasn't there." She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You always do this thing where you act sad until everybody feels guilty." I actually laughed softly this time because the projection was unbelievable. "Do I?" "Yes." "Then why did it take Aunt Carol to notice?" "Why not you?" That shut her up immediately. For a second I saw something underneath her anger. Not cruelty. Fear. Because somewhere deep down, Madison knew the entire structure only worked as long as I stayed quiet. The moment I started speaking honestly, everything became unstable. She looked back toward the dining room where our mother's voice floated through the house. Then back at me. "Can't you let one thing be about me?" I held her gaze steadily. "You already had the whole party." She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away and called for my mother. I stood there alone in the hallway listening to them whisper urgently in the kitchen. And suddenly, for the first time in my entire life, I understood something clearly. This was never really about Madison. Not completely. Madison had simply grown up inside the role my mother built for her. The favorite, the golden daughter, the center of gravity. But my mother was the architect of all of it. She designed the imbalance, fed it, protected it, and expected me to survive quietly underneath it forever. I left before dessert. Nobody stopped me. At the front door, Aunt Carol touched my arm gently. "You okay?" I nodded once. "I think I finally will be." The drive home felt strangely peaceful. Not happy, not healed, just clear. Like after years of fog, I could finally see the shape of my life honestly. When I got back to my apartment, I opened my laptop and stared at the guest list for my birthday dinner. 2 empty spaces still remained. Without overthinking it, I typed one name, Claire Monroe. Then I picked up my phone and sent her a message. "My birthday dinner is September 28th at Willow and Rye. Would you like to come?" 3 minutes later, she replied.
I'll bring wine.
I smiled before I could stop myself. Because for the first time in a very long time, something new was entering my life that wasn't built on obligation. September 28th arrived warmer than expected for early fall. The entire day, I kept waiting for something to go wrong. Some dramatic phone call, some family emergency, some last-minute collapse that would somehow prove I didn't deserve a day that belonged entirely to me. But none of that happened. At 6:30 that evening, I walked into the private room at Willow and Rye and stopped for a second just to look at it. It wasn't extravagant. No crystal chandeliers. No customized sculptures. No giant glowing signs screaming someone's name into the universe. Just soft amber light reflecting against brick walls, little candles flickering inside glass jars, wildflowers arranged in mismatched bottles down the center of a long wooden table. Simple. Warm. Real. Mine. Olivia arrived first, carrying a wrapped gift bag and wearing the same oversized denim jacket she'd owned since college. The second she saw me, she opened her arms wide. There's the birthday girl. Birthday girl. Singular. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear those words until my throat tightened instantly. Jordan came right behind her carrying ridiculous gold party hats from a dollar store. Absolutely non-negotiable, he announced while tossing one at me. Within 20 minutes, the room filled with noise and warmth. Maya and Chris came straight from work still wearing office clothes. Tessa arrived balancing a cake box carefully in both hands like she was transporting explosives. "You are not emotionally prepared for this," she warned. Then she opened the lid. White frosting, blue lettering, 3 simple words written across the top. "Just Harper." I stared at the cake for several seconds before speaking. My chest hurt suddenly in the strangest way. Not painful, overwhelmed, like someone had finally handed me proof I existed. Tessa looked nervous. "Too much?" I shook my head immediately. "No," I whispered. "It's perfect." And it was because nobody had ever celebrated me without attaching someone else's name beside mine before. Not once. More people arrived. My cousins Avery and Cole. A couple coworkers. Friends who genuinely wanted to be there instead of showing up out of obligation. Every laugh in that room sounded different from the sounds at my family gatherings. Lighter. Nobody was performing closeness. Nobody was competing for attention. Then finally the door opened one last time. Claire walked in, holding a bottle of Pinot Noir and wearing an uncertain little smile. For a split second, she looked like she wasn't sure she belonged there. I crossed the room before she could second-guess herself and hugged her immediately. "Happy birthday," she said softly. "Thanks for coming." "No," she replied quietly. "Thank you for inviting me." Something about that exchange settled deep inside me, because the people in that room had chosen me voluntarily, not because we shared DNA, not because social expectations demanded it, because they cared. Dinner stretched for hours. Wine flowed, conversations overlapped, candles melted lower. At one point, I realized something almost shocking. I was relaxed, actually relaxed, not monitoring everyone's moods, not shrinking myself, not waiting for somebody else to take center stage, just existing naturally inside my own life. Then Olivia stood up suddenly and tapped her wine glass with a fork. "Oh no," I groaned immediately. "Oh yes," she grinned. Everyone laughed. Olivia looked around the table dramatically. "When I was 22, she began. "My car broke down in the middle of nowhere during a snowstorm at 11 o'clock at night. I already knew where this was going and covered my face with my hands. She called Harper," Olivia continued. "And this lunatic drove 4 hours through a blizzard to get me." The table erupted. Jordan pointed at me accusingly. "That is deeply concerning behavior." Olivia ignored him. "That's who Harper is," she said firmly. "She shows up for people. Quietly. Consistently. Without making everything about herself." I looked down at the table because suddenly my eyes burned. "And honestly," Olivia added, "the fact it took 33 years for someone to throw her a birthday party that actually belonged to her is criminal." Everyone raised their glasses immediately. "Hear, hear." I laughed through the sting behind my eyes. Then Maya spoke from farther down the table. "Harper brought soup to my apartment when my daughter had strep throat last winter," she said. "Nobody at work even remembered my kid was sick." "Harper did." Chris nodded. "She covered one of my audits when my dad was hospitalized and never told anyone." Jordan leaned back in his chair grinning. "She once drove to Nashville at 2 in the morning because I got dumped and threatened to adopt 6 cats." "That was a legitimate concern," I argued weakly. The room exploded laughing again. Story after story surfaced. Little moments, quiet kindnesses. The kind of things my mother never noticed because they didn't come with titles or applause or public recognition. I sat there stunned listening to people describe me like I mattered, like I had substance outside the role my family assigned me. Then Claire stood up, and the room slowly quieted. She held her wine glass carefully in both hands. For the first time since I'd met her at the cafe, she didn't look anxious. She looked certain. "I haven't known Harper very long," she began evenly. "But I know what it feels like to be removed from someone's life the second you stop being convenient." The room went still. Not uncomfortable stillness. Listening stillness. Claire glanced toward me briefly before continuing. "I spent years believing loyalty guaranteed permanence. That if you loved people enough, eventually they'd protect you too." Her voice remained calm, but there was old hurt underneath it. "Then one day I became inconvenient. I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. I asked questions, and suddenly I was rewritten into the villain. Nobody interrupted. Nobody looked away. I think what struck me most about Harper, Claire said softly, is that she never needed to invent anything about herself to deserve love. I felt the entire room shift emotionally. She doesn't exaggerate accomplishments to feel important. She doesn't manipulate people into loyalty. She doesn't need attention to prove she exists. Tessa quietly lifted her phone, recording without making a spectacle of it. Instinctively, like she understood this moment mattered. Claire raised her glass toward me. So here's to Harper Calloway, a woman who doesn't need a $12,000 venue to prove she deserves celebrating. A few people laughed softly. Claire smiled. And a woman who spent way too long believing she had to earn basic love. Every glass at the table lifted. Happy birthday, Harper! The sound of everyone toasting echoed warmly around the room, and suddenly I understood something devastating. This was the first birthday of my entire life where I wasn't emotionally starving. Nobody there treated me like an afterthought. Nobody needed me smaller for themselves to feel bigger. For the first time ever, I wasn't standing at the edge of my own life watching somebody else occupy the center. I was finally inside it. The dinner ended around 10. I hugged everyone goodbye twice. Jordan stole 3 leftover party hats. Olivia made me promise not to wash dishes that night because it violates birthday law. Claire lingered near the doorway after everyone else started leaving. Tonight was really good, she said quietly. It was. You deserved this years ago. That sentence settled heavily in my chest. Because she was right. After she left, I drove home with leftover cake sitting in my passenger seat and a strange fullness inside me I barely recognized. Not happiness exactly, something steadier, like relief, like finally being witnessed correctly. At 11:30, my phone buzzed. Tessa. Madison saw Avery's Instagram story. I frowned. What story? The clip of Claire's toast. My stomach dropped slightly. I opened Instagram immediately. Avery had uploaded a short video from the restaurant. Just the final part of Claire's speech. The line about not needing a $12,000 venue to prove your worth. 47 people had viewed it already. One of them was Madison, and judging by the view count, she'd watched it multiple times. Another message from Tessa arrived minutes later. Your mom is freaking out. Then another. Madison's calling everybody asking what Claire said. I stared at my screen quietly. Midnight, 12:17. Still for you? My mother called once. I ignored it. Then Madison started texting. Rapid fire. No punctuation. Why was Claire there? What has she told you? You have no idea what actually happened. She's manipulating you. Call me right now. I read every message carefully, then locked my phone and set it face down beside me. The apartment stayed quiet around me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for refusing to rescue someone else from the consequences of their own behavior. At exactly 2:03 a.m., my phone rang again. Madison. This time I answered. How dare you? That was how Madison started the conversation. No hello. No pause. Just fury exploding through the phone at 2 in the morning. I sat up slowly against my headboard and kept my voice calm. Hi to you too. How could you invite Claire to your party? There was genuine panic underneath the anger now. Not annoyance. Fear. She's my friend, I replied evenly. She is not your friend. She came to celebrate my birthday. That's all. That's all? Madison snapped. She stood there taking shots at me in front of everybody. I rubbed my eyes tiredly. She never said your name. She didn't have to. Silence stretched for a second. Then she lowered her voice, trying to regain control. You have no idea what she's been saying about me. Then tell me the truth. Another silence, sharp breathing through the line. I stared out my bedroom window at the empty parking lot below. Are you still working at Hawthorne Media? The silence after that question felt different. Heavy, like something collapsing quietly. Finally, Madison spoke. That's none of your business. I nodded slowly even though she couldn't see me. You're right, I said softly. Just like my birthday apparently wasn't any of yours. That's not fair. I almost laughed. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. No, I said honestly. I really don't. Madison exhaled shakily. You humiliated me tonight. I had dinner with people who care about me. You knew Claire would make things uncomfortable. She told the truth. She told her version. I leaned my head back against the wall. No, Madison. Your problem is that she stopped protecting your version. That hit. I could feel it through the silence. Then suddenly the anger cracked completely, and underneath it was somebody exhausted. Mom can't know everything, she whispered. I closed my eyes. Too late. That single sentence told me everything. Not it isn't true. Not Claire lied. Just fear. Pure fear. She already doesn't know everything, I replied quietly. Madison's breathing became uneven. You don't understand what it's like. I almost said something cruel. Almost. But instead I asked the question I'd probably been carrying my whole life. What's it like knowing Mom only loves you when you're impressive? Silence. Then finally, she loves you too. I laughed softly. Even Madison didn't sound convinced by that. No, I said gently. She loves the version of us that makes her feel successful. That was the first truly honest thing either of us had ever said to each other. And I think we both knew it. Madison suddenly sounded very small. If I fail, she looks at me differently. I swallowed hard because underneath all the manipulation and selfishness was still my little sister. Still a girl raised inside the same emotional system I was. I just reacted to it differently. I disappeared inside it. Madison performed for it. Neither of us got out unharmed. She threw you a $12,000 party because she thought you were succeeding, I said quietly. Do you understand how heartbreaking that is? Madison started crying then. Not dramatic crying. Not performative. Real crying. Messy breathing. Raw panic. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. I stared into the darkness of my apartment. And suddenly I realized something important. For the first time in our lives, Madison wasn't calling from a position of power. She was terrified. Not of me. Of losing the identity our mother built her entire life around. The successful daughter. The special daughter. The chosen daughter. Harper, she said shakily, please don't tell Mom. I sat quietly for several seconds before answering. I never wanted to destroy you. Then why are you doing this? That question almost stunned me, because she genuinely believed my refusal to stay silent was cruelty. I'm not doing anything to you, I said softly. I just stopped disappearing for everybody else's comfort. She cried harder after that. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger toward her, just sadness. Because Madison had spent so many years being rewarded for perfection, that failure now felt life-threatening to her. We stayed on the phone another minute in silence before I finally said, "Good night, Madison." She didn't answer immediately. Then very quietly, "Happy birthday." It was 2 weeks late, and somehow still the first sincere birthday acknowledgement I'd ever received from her. I hung up afterward and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The apartment was completely silent. No yelling. No chaos. Just me sitting alone in the dark realizing something strange. The $12,000 party already felt unimportant. Because for the first time, the illusion underneath my family had cracked open enough for everyone to see it. The next morning, my mother called at 9:12 a.m. I could tell she'd been crying before she even spoke. Madison is devastated. I poured coffee slowly while balancing the phone between my shoulder and ear. What did I do? You invited Claire. She was invited because she's my friend. She embarrassed your sister. No, I corrected calmly. The truth embarrassed her. My mother inhaled sharply. I cannot believe how cold you're being. That almost made me laugh. 33 years of emotional neglect, and somehow I was still expected to prioritize everybody else's feelings over my own existence. She threw a luxury birthday party on my birthday and left me out completely, I said evenly. Then you lied to the family about why I wasn't there? We didn't want drama. You created drama. You're punishing this family. I closed my eyes briefly. No, Mom. I'm just finally refusing to absorb all the damage quietly. Silence. Then the familiar shift in her voice. From wounded victim to irritated authority figure. I cannot talk to you when you're acting like this. You've never really talked to me at all. That stopped her. For a full 5 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then softer than before, she said, "That's not true." I leaned against my kitchen counter. Then tell me one thing you know about me that isn't connected to Madison. Nothing. Not one answer. Because my mother knew me mostly through comparison. The quieter daughter. The responsible one. The independent one. Not Harper, just the opposite of Madison. When she finally spoke again, her voice sounded tired instead of angry. I did my best. No, I said quietly. You did what was easiest. And for the first time in my life, my mother didn't hang up immediately. She just breathed. Like somebody standing in the middle of ruins finally realizing they lived there too. That afternoon, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door, expecting maybe a delivery driver or one of my neighbors. Instead, there he stood in his old brown jacket with both hands shoved awkwardly into his pockets, like a teenager being sent to apologize. For a second, neither of us spoke. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside. He walked into the apartment slowly, looking around like he'd never really seen where I lived before. Which honestly, maybe he hadn't. My parents had visited exactly twice in 4 years. Both times because Madison happened to be nearby too. I made coffee while he sat stiffly at my kitchen table. The silence between us wasn't angry, just unfamiliar. Like two people who technically loved each other but had never learned how to actually communicate honestly. Finally, he cleared his throat. "We haven't been fair to you." The sentence landed heavily in the room. Because my father wasn't a man who said difficult things out loud. He specialized in avoiding them. I sat across from him slowly. "No," I agreed softly. "You haven't." He nodded once, staring into his coffee. "I should have said something years ago." "But you didn't." Another nod. No excuses this time. That mattered. "I kept telling myself things would settle down eventually," he admitted quietly. "That your mother would realize it on her own." I folded my hands together tightly. "She didn't." "No." His voice sounded exhausted. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a man finally realizing avoidance is still a decision. "I saw things," he continued. "More than I admitted." Something inside me tightened. "What things?" He gave a sad little smile without humor. "The Cinderella party when you were 10. You cried in the bathroom because the dress didn't fit, and your mother told you not to ruin the pictures." I looked down immediately because I hadn't thought about that moment in years. "She said we'd do your space party the next year," he said quietly. "We never did." "I know." The kitchen suddenly felt very still. "I remember your 16th birthday, too," he added. "You wanted dinner downtown." I laughed softly under my breath. "Instead, we rented bounce houses." He rubbed his face tiredly. "I knew it wasn't fair." I looked at him for a long moment. "Then why didn't you stop it?" That question sat between us heavily. My father looked older suddenly. Not physically, just worn down. "Because confronting your mother always felt harder than disappointing you." There it was. The truth. Simple, ugly, honest. And somehow, honesty hurt less than years of excuses ever had. I stared at him quietly while traffic hummed faintly outside my apartment windows. "You chose comfort," I said finally. "Yes." He didn't argue, didn't defend himself, just accepted it. And strangely, that honesty made me feel calmer instead of angrier. Because at least somebody in my family was finally telling the truth without twisting it into something else first. My father glanced toward my refrigerator, then suddenly froze. Taped to the side was an old photo strip from a drugstore booth. I'd found it while cleaning months earlier and stuck it there absent-mindedly. Me at 10 years old wearing that too small blue princess dress. Smiling anyway. Pretending anyway. He stared at it quietly. "I forgot that dress was too small," he whispered. I swallowed hard. I didn't. He looked at me then with eyes red around the edges. "I see you now, Harper." That sentence nearly broke me. Not because it fixed anything. It didn't. 33 years don't disappear because somebody finally notices the damage. But because all I'd ever wanted was acknowledgement. Not perfection. Not revenge. Just to be seen accurately. "You should have seen me sooner," I said quietly. "I know." We sat in silence after that. Not comfortable silence, but honest silence. And honest was still an improvement over pretending. When he finally stood to leave, he paused near the front door. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "that cake Tessa made." I smiled faintly. "Just Harper?" He nodded. That hit me pretty hard. "Why?" He looked down for a second before answering. "Because I realized how many years we let it be just Madison." After he left, I stood alone in my apartment for a long time thinking about that sentence. We let it be. Not fate. Not accidents. Choices. Repeated quietly over decades until they became normal. That night, I did something terrifying. I opened our family group chat. Mom, Dad, Madison, me. And for 10 full minutes, I stared at the blinking cursor trying to figure out how to summarize 33 years of invisibility into a few sentences. Then finally I typed, "I love this family, but I'm done pretending being overlooked is the same thing as being loved." I'm not asking for apologies right now. I'm telling you what I need moving forward. I need to be treated like I exist as my own person. Not as Madison's sister. Not as the quiet one. Not as the easy one. As Harper, if that can't happen, then I need distance. This isn't punishment. It's me choosing myself for the first time. My hands shook before I hit send. Then the message appeared in the chat. Read immediately by all three of them. No response. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing. I made tea, sat on my couch, watched headlights move across the ceiling from the street below. At 9:13, Tessa texted privately. I'm proud of you. A minute later, Avery sent a heart emoji. Then Jordan. About damn time. I laughed quietly through sudden tears. Meanwhile, the family group chat remained silent. Until finally, close to midnight, Madison answered, This is unbelievably unfair. You're making me into a villain when I haven't done anything wrong. I read the message twice, then locked my phone without replying, because there was nothing left to explain to someone who still believed accountability was cruelty. My mother never responded that night, or the next day. But at 12:41 a.m., my father sent me a private text. 4 simple words. I hear you, Harper. No punctuation, no dramatic speech, just acknowledgement. Small, late, but real. And slowly, quietly, the cracks in my family started spreading. Not explosively, not like screaming matches in movies, more like pressure finally exposing fractures that had always existed underneath the surface. Aunt Carol called my mother, asking why I'd said I wasn't invited to the party. My mother tried repeating the work deadline story, but now it sounded thinner, less believable, because once people notice a missing piece, they start looking at the whole picture differently. At another family gathering, my cousin Cole casually asked Madison about her promotion. What accounts are you managing now? Madison stumbled immediately. Oh, mostly internal restructuring stuff. Cole worked in engineering. He recognized deflection instantly. Later that night, Tessa texted me. People are starting to connect dots. I didn't feel triumphant reading that. Just tired. Because I hadn't exposed anyone. I simply stopped helping maintain the illusion. A couple weeks later, Madison blocked me on everything. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, which somehow felt the most dramatic of all. Tessa became my accidental source of updates. She's not doing great, she admitted carefully during one phone call. I stared out my window while rain streaked softly down the glass. What does that mean? She's panicking. People keep asking questions about Claire, about work. She can't keep her stories straight anymore. I closed my eyes. The thing about lies is they aren't heavy when you tell them. They become heavy when you have to keep carrying them forever. And Madison had been carrying hers for months while trying to perform perfection at the same time. Eventually, something was always going to collapse. I just stopped volunteering to hold the structure up for her. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my mother called again. But this time her voice sounded different. Not angry, not manipulative, just tired. What's going on with Madison's job? I leaned back slowly in my office chair. That's probably something you should ask Madison. I'm asking her. She won't answer me. Silence stretched between us. Then quietly, You know something, don't you? I stared at the spreadsheets open on my computer screen. For 33 years, I would have lied to protect the peace. But suddenly I understood something important. The peace in my family had never actually been peace. It was silence. And silence is not the same thing. I know you spent $12,000 celebrating a promotion that never happened, I said softly. My mother inhaled sharply. And I know you ignored the daughter who never lied to you once. Dead silence. I could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere on her end of the line. That's cruel, Harper. No, I replied calmly. Cruel was pretending I didn't exist because Madison was easier to celebrate. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something in her voice cracked. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Just human. Soft. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I closed my eyes briefly. That's part of the problem, Mom. After that phone call, things shifted slowly. Not magically. Not cleanly. Real families don't heal in one emotional conversation. They fracture quietly first. Then they decide whether they're willing to rebuild honestly or keep pretending the cracks aren't there. November arrived cold and gray. The trees outside my apartment turned copper-colored, and every morning smelled faintly like rain and chimney smoke. I spoke to my mother less. Not as punishment. I just stopped doing all the emotional work for both of us. Before, I used to fill every silence immediately. Call first. Text first. Smooth things over. Now I let empty space exist. And for the first time in my life, my mother had to decide whether she wanted a relationship with me badly enough to reach across it herself. Some Sundays she called. The conversations were awkward, smaller, but different. She asked about my work once without redirecting the conversation back to Madison within 30 seconds. That sounds tiny. It shouldn't feel revolutionary. But it did. One evening, she actually listened while I talked about a difficult audit case for almost 10 minutes straight. No interruption. No comparison. No, your sister would love this client. Just listening. When we hung up, I sat on my couch staring at my phone because I genuinely didn't know what to do with the feeling. It was grief, I realized. Grief for how little attention had always felt enormous to me. My father started calling every Thursday evening, always around 7. Short conversations. 10 minutes, maybe? He told me about yard work, a documentary he watched, a casserole recipe he'd ruined, tiny, ordinary things fathers probably talk about with daughters all the time. Except mine never really had before. And slowly, I realized something. For the first time in my life, my father was speaking to me without an agenda, not mediating for my mother, not asking me to calm down, not trying to preserve peace, just talking to me because I was his daughter. Madison still hadn't spoken to me since the 2 a.m. phone call. According to Tessa, she finally admitted the truth about Hawthorne Media to my mother. No promotion. No executive role. No glamorous success story. Just termination papers and 4 months of pretending. Apparently my mother didn't take it well. That part didn't make me feel good the way I once imagined it might. There was no satisfaction in being proven right. Only sadness. Because underneath all the lies and favoritism and emotional damage, we were still a family. A broken one. But still one. One rainy Wednesday afternoon near the end of November, my mother called again. This time I was sitting at my kitchen table working through quarterly reports with jazz playing softly in the background. Her voice sounded strange immediately. Fragile. I owe you an apology. I slowly set my pen down. Outside the window, rain slid down the glass in crooked silver lines. I said nothing. For once, I let her continue without rescuing her from the discomfort. I don't know when I started making everything about Madison, she admitted quietly. The honesty in her voice startled me. Not polished honesty. Not rehearsed. Real honesty sounds messier. Less graceful. I think, she stopped, inhaled shakily. I think I was so afraid of losing her that I stopped noticing I was losing you. Tears burned instantly behind my eyes. But I kept my voice steady. You didn't stop noticing me, Mom. Silence. Then softly, you're right. That almost broke me more than the apology itself. Because for once she didn't defend herself. Didn't minimize it. Didn't accuse me of being dramatic. She just accepted the truth. I'm sorry, Harper. The words landed heavily inside me. Not like a movie moment where everything suddenly heals. More like the first clean breath after years inside a locked room. It doesn't fix everything, I said quietly. I know. We can't pretend 33 years didn't happen. I know. She started crying then, but differently than before. Not the crying she used to end arguments. Not manipulative tears. Just grief. Quiet grief. The sound of somebody finally hearing themselves clearly. I should have protected both my daughters equally, she whispered. I swallowed hard. Yes. Silence settled between us again. But this silence felt different. Not avoidance. Reflection. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I told her finally. But things have to actually change. Not temporarily. Not emotionally for 1 week. Permanently. They will. I almost corrected her. Almost said people don't transform overnight. But something stopped me. Because maybe growth starts exactly like this. Awkwardly. Imperfectly. Late. Before hanging up, she said my name one more time. Harper. Just that. But something about the way she said it made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Like she was learning how to speak to me without looking past me for the first time. A few days later, Claire texted me a picture from a cafe. 2 coffee cups. Morning sunlight through a window. Caption. First official coffee date as actual friends instead of survivors of the same family circus. I laughed out loud alone in my apartment. Then replied, progress. The truth was, something good had quietly started growing in the empty space where constant emotional disappointment used to live. Friendships. Boundaries. Peace. Actual peace. Not silence disguised as peace. Real peace. The kind that lets you breathe normally. By December, the family gossip had mostly settled. Not disappeared. Just changed shape. People stopped treating me like the difficult daughter, because once someone starts telling the truth, calmly, consistently, without theatrics, eventually the performance around them becomes harder to maintain. Aunt Carol started calling me directly instead of through my mother. My cousins invited me to things separately. Even family dynamics shifted subtly once everyone realized I was no longer willing to quietly absorb unfairness to keep gatherings comfortable. Then one Saturday morning, while drinking coffee at my kitchen table, I looked over at the calendar hanging beside the fridge. September next year was already printed faintly across the page. I stood up slowly, walked over, and circled September 14th in blue ink. Then underneath it I wrote two words. My birthday. Not ours. Not Harper and Madison. Just mine. I stared at it for a long moment afterward, and unexpectedly I smiled. Not bitterly, not sadly, just peacefully, because for the first time in my life, I understood something nobody had ever taught me before. Being loved properly should never require disappearing first. My phone buzzed beside me. A text from Claire. Same dinner next year? I smiled immediately. Absolutely. Should I start preparing another speech? Only if Jordan isn't allowed to buy decorations again. Three dots appeared instantly. Too late. He already found another gold crown. I laughed quietly to myself and set the phone down. The apartment around me felt warm and calm. Sunlight stretched across the kitchen floor. Coffee steamed softly in my hands. And suddenly I realized something important. I'd spent 33 years waiting for somebody else to hand me a seat at the table. Waiting for permission. Waiting to matter equally. Waiting for somebody to finally look at me and say, "You belong here too." But the truth was, I never needed permission to celebrate my own existence. I could build my own table, choose my own people, create my own traditions. And the strange, beautiful thing was, the moment I finally did that, the loneliness I'd carried most of my life started disappearing. Not because my family transformed instantly, not because everything became perfect, but because I finally stopped measuring my worth by who failed to see it. I didn't get revenge. I got something better. I got myself back. And that's where my story ends. I spent most of my life believing that if I stayed patient enough, quiet enough, understanding enough, eventually the people I loved would finally see me the way I deserved to be seen. But the truth is, some people get so comfortable with your silence that they stop noticing your absence completely. The hardest part wasn't being left out of one birthday party. The hardest part was realizing how long I had accepted being treated like an afterthought just to keep everyone else comfortable. But the moment I stopped shrinking myself, everything changed. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But honestly, and honestly is better. If you've ever been the forgotten one, the quiet one, the person who kept giving love while receiving crumbs back, I hope you remember this. You do not need permission to celebrate your own existence. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to stop begging for a seat at tables where people only notice you when you're missing. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is build your own table and fill it with people who never make you question whether you belong there. Thank you for listening to my story.